Hello and welcome to our podcast. This is a millennial and Gen Z talk about, and today we're going to be talking about the Hangover series, one of the best comedies that is out there. And yeah, my name's Brian. I'm the Tank Thinker. I'm a millennial.
I'm Brandon, and I'm the Gen Z.
So essentially, we wanted to do this podcast for our second episode. We want to do the Hangover series specifically because we like we said we felt like it was one of the best comedy series out there. A lot of times
Yep.
when we're thinking about comedies to watch, there's not too many options, especially these days, and you end up going back to some of the classics like the Hangover series.
Yeah, great rewatchability. It's just a memorable and unique idea. Uh, and it's definitely, like you mentioned, one of the top comedies of all time.
Exactly. Yeah, the rewatchability. I mean, I think I've rewatched these movies. Rewatched them probably first and second for sure. Maybe not the third, but first and second, maybe a few times every year. And you're with different people or you're in a different mood,
Yeah.
and you feel like watching something good and classic, and then you end up just putting it on.
Yeah, similar thing with me. Like I've rewatched specifically. It's usually the first movie that I'll rewatch if I'm really in the mood. And I'll show some people the entire trilogy. But if I'm with new people and they want to watch a movie, The Hangover is really just a movie that pretty much anyone would enjoy.
And
So it's really easy to just put on.
yeah, exactly. And the one of the funnest things is to actually watch the movie with somebody who's never watched it before, even though that's extremely rare. Um, so I guess first we'll talk about our general impressions about the trilogy, and then we'll go into some other things like we'll go into the characters, we'll break down each movie individually, and we'll talk about our favorite scenes and whether we think a Hangover 4 might be on the horizon.
All right, sounds good.
So, Brandon, what were your general impressions of the trilogy?
Uh, well, I saw them fairly young, surprisingly. Maybe when I was around 7 or 8 years old. And even at that age, I could easily tell, man, this is a fantastic movie. And I remember the first time I finished it, I just instantly thought, man, I want to go to Vegas. And even though the series of events are kind of fucked up, in a way, every man wants to go through what they did.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I remember when it first came out. I think I was in my late teens. What year did the first one come out?
Let
Was
me take a
it
look.
2000?
Yeah, let me pull it up. The first movie came out in 2009.
2009. So I was 19 years old when that came out.
Dude,
So
I was like probably
I
like
wasn't
four or
even
five.
I wasn't even legal in Vegas at that time. But
Dude, I was like 4 or 5 years old, man, around there.
yeah, yeah. So I remember when it first came out, and we went to theaters to watch it. Like, people were really blown away, because I don't think
Really?
anything quite like it. Like, there's a lot of movies about guys going on a trip, right, and
But it's never
experience
been that
stuff
well
like
done before,
road
right?
trip. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the interesting part of it was their lack of memory, right? It's like taking the movie Memento or something and making it into a comedy. It's like,
It
what
would, yeah.
happens, you have to piece it together. And yeah, so in terms of like the entire trilogy as a whole, I honestly think that they could have gotten away with just making one movie and it would
Yeah,
have been fine.
absolutely.
I don't think they needed a second movie, even though I enjoyed the second one, and I think it was a fresh enough take to be fun and interesting.
Yeah.
The
And I
third,
don't even hate the third. I don't even hate it, to be honest. I'm fine with it.
yeah, I think rewatching it again after, I liked it more than when I first watched it.
I see,
um,
yeah.
because they kind of take things in a different direction, and in a lot of movies it's like, in the next movie you have to escalate things have to get crazier and
Exactly.
more ambitious, and I think the second movie they had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And,
Um,
and they had an opportunity to do that well, and the third one it was just like, okay, what's going on now?
yeah, I know you. I kind of want to talk about one thing that I really like about the trilogy,
Okay.
which is the group, with Stu, Doug, Alan, and Phil, is they're kind of like exaggerated version of what you have in real life, like a similar friends group. Like there are people in my friends group where I can see them similar, like with similar traits to those characters. So you kind of feel more connected with them because their relationship feels so real. Because I feel like every friend kind of has a Stu, or every friends group has kind of like a Phil, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I can totally see that, and I think that was specifically made that way, right? To make the characters as relatable as possible and put them through this experience. And the funny thing actually is Doug essentially represents the average guy,
Yeah.
right? Like if you look at his thing, he's like the average guy. So him being missing, I think
Yeah, it makes
puts
perfect sense.
yeah, it
In my
puts a lot of the audience in that kind of shoes, right? Because
Oh,
it's like
that's right. Now
you
he's
know
gone. You're kind of put into. It
in
almost feels
you
like you're the
exactly
boring guy.
you took over the
Doug's
regular
role.
Doug's guys role with the three of them
Yeah,
going on
yeah,
the
that's a
adventure.
good point.
Which is
And
something that they do in a lot of movies, right? Like Keanu Reeves being cast as Neo because he's the type of actor that doesn't have a lot of personality, so characters, the audience can put their thing over
their
him. So I
eyes
think
into
that's
them. Yeah,
something that was
exactly.
specifically made and works really well with the trilogy. Well, with the first movie specifically,
Yeah, yeah,
right? In the second movie, you notice in the second movie they still had to take out Doug, but
yeah.
he wasn't the
That's
main
true.
focus anymore.
Pretty much, yeah. In every single movie, for the most part, Doug isn't really there.
Exactly. Because that's what he represents. We are the Doug,
Yeah.
right? So I guess that wraps up our opinions. So let's move on into each individual movie.
Okay.
So, movie number one,
The best one, aka
the
the best one,
the
the
best one, the
classic.
one that set the trend, the one that, um, the one that really
Define what the
made what
series
everything
is. So what
exactly.
defines a good comedy? Pretty much. This is what this movie is. The Hangover is a perfect movie to show this is what a comedy should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with like the type of comedy that The Hangover is I think it's not casual comedy. It's more like um, I don't want to say realistic comedy either. More like maybe like uh, um, mundane comedy. Like
I
it's
guess, yeah.
grounded comedy, right?
Yeah,
Because
one thing I also is like usually with a lot of comedies, what makes them funny is the character's dialogue. What makes the Hangover movies funny, specifically, especially the first one, is not necessarily about the characters quipping jokes. It's about the situations that they go through.
and their reactions. It's like a regular, not necessarily a regular, but like we said before, how the characters like we all have a stew in our group. So it's like imagine your stew from your group reacting if you guys were in that situation. And
Yeah,
it's kind
exactly.
of exaggerated, right? Too, but it's like yeah, I could I could see them reacting that way, but it's grounded because it's not like some like over the top ridiculous thing happen, like for example in an Adam Sandler movie, right,
Yeah,
where things are
very
kind of
true.
quirky and loose and with the
Exactly,
facts of what's going on. But The Hangover is like, okay, this series of events, it technically could have happened if you were on
Yeah.
enough roofies and
You,
you were crazy
love
and
drugs
you
and
were with
alcohol. Yeah, you do all this shit.
and you were with your buddies, like and you guys had a
Exactly.
credit card and roofies are in your system. You could see yourself getting into that kind of trouble.
And that's part of the appeal. It feels a bit more grounded. So you kind of makes you want to desire that situation even more because you know it's possible.
Yeah, and a big part of the first movie, and this movie made Zach Galifianakis, right?
Yeah.
So it was the introduction of the character of two major characters, which is Alan and Chap. So
Yes.
first Alan, played by Zach Galifianakis, his
And you got
character was so fantastic because I think like like we said before, everyone knows a guy like Zach
yeah,
Galifianakis. Like
Alan's Zach Galifianakis' character Alan is kind of like a slightly exaggerated version of that one odd guy that you may know or that's in your friends group.
Yeah, and they're
Uh,
not quite right, and they react to situations in a way that you're just like that you
what the
either
fuck?
you're cringing or
You're
you're
confused.
laughing or you're looking at your other buddies like, what the fuck is this guy
Yeah,
talking about? You know?
exactly, exactly.
And so that just cemented it because it's like he kind of got um it was almost like he was guilt tripped into it. I mean, Doug wasn't guilt tripped. Like, he did it because he wanted to make his wife happy, right? To
Yeah,
put him in.
exactly.
But it's like he's not regularly part of their thing, but he like infuses himself into them. Like, remember the scene where he's like the wolf pack, you know?
Yeah, so and he
Well,
cuts himself.
before it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just
yeah.
me, now it's all three of us. And yeah, and he
Exactly.
cuts himself, right? And they're just like, okay, let's just try and ignore his shit. Have a good night.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so another aspect of the first movie that was absolutely fantastic and that they copy over into the second movie is the whole memento thing of waking up and not knowing what's going on,
Yes.
right? And the
It's like the
audience,
hangover.
the hangover, and the audience doesn't know what's going on, and how they show off like all the shit that happened in the hotel room, and then how they they find a baby, and then they come outside and they
Yes.
feel like complete shit.
Right. Showing this movie to a lot of people, I think majority of everyone who hasn't seen this movie before expects the whole movie to be about the actual night that happened. Like we see them going through the night of them being drugged up and stuff. But what's interesting about this movie is we only see the aftermath for the most part.
Yeah, because actually I feel like most comedies around that time, that's what they would do, is they would show the night of, like, oh,
Yeah, as
this is the
opposed to the
crazy
aftermath.
shit that happened, right? And this one, it's like you're blank. You're with them. They're blank, and they're having that situation. I know you haven't had these situations yet because you're not old enough, but
Yes.
on those crazy nights where you get drunk, or maybe you did certain substances, and you can't
Yes.
really remember what happened the night before, and you're with your buddies, and it's the morning of, and you go have breakfast, maybe it's at a Denny's or something, and you talk about it, and you're like, hey, remember when this happened? Oh, I know, yeah, that happened and this happened. So again, you're in that like situation with them where they're there, except this time they literally don't know what happened. They're going through their pockets
Well,
like
everyone
what the
searched their
fuck.
pockets, so we had to figure out what happened last night. Exactly. And
And I sorry, go on.
I think that because we only get shown the aftermath of the night, those small glimpses of the actual night happening, like those few second clips of them remembering, makes them even more hilarious. Because we only get small snippets,
Hmm.
and the end credits has this whole photo collage of all the events that happened during that night. But
Yeah, it
that
sort
whole
of
scene is
pieces it together, right?
exact, and it's even more hilarious because there's so much buildup because we've never gotten a full look of what actually happened that night.
Yeah, it's like the obstruction to the story actually is helping the hilarity of the comedy,
Exactly.
and that's yeah, and it just makes it so good. The other thing about the first movie that I liked is along the way they introduce new crazy characters, or not even
Yeah.
necessarily crazy characters, but like interesting characters, right? Like they have that guy, I forgot his name, but he owns the wedding place, right? Then they have the cops, then they have Mike Tyson,
Yes. Yeah, that was amazing.
and they
So
have
it's
Chow, right?
every time I show someone this movie for the first time, every time they see Mike Tyson, they go crazy. It's such a great moment. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, and you would like I remember watching the movie for the first time. You're just like, what the hell? Mike Tyson's in this movie? Like,
Mike Tyson is, yeah, yeah, so good, so good.
um, yeah, and then underlying the whole thing is just the issue, because like I love at the beginning how they're not taking it seriously that Doug's missing, because like
It's
it
like, oh,
happens.
he
It's like, oh,
probably,
where's our buddy? Oh, he was sleeping in the other hotel room. Oh, okay, he's probably there doing this.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
it slowly gets serious for them. Like, where's Doug? Imagine your buddy's missing, and you're like, dude, he's like the main event
Right?
in a day's time. He's got to be married. Like, his wife's gonna kill us. We were responsible for him. So it creates that tension. Um,
Yeah, that was the perfect setup, which is having the guy who's supposed to get married being missing. That is a perfect because you know how like someone's wedding day is meant to be the perfect day of their lives,
Yeah.
and it's kind of so having them miss that, it's the perfect plot device for tension.
And it's even more so because it's he's the regular guy, right?
Right.
So if it was if it was Phil, for example, that was missing, I think a lot of people can talk it up like, oh, Phil, he's probably doing some crazy shit because he's always
Yeah.
wanting to do, he's always wanting to go to a strip club
Right.
or go to this or that. If it was Alan that was missing, they'd be like, okay,
Yeah, it's Alan.
like
It's
he's
Alan.
he's he's fucked, like he's fucked in the
Yeah.
head. He's probably doing some other shit. If it was Stu, they would probably freak out with Stu too. If he was missing, but
No,
Doug,
it's Stu. You know, they wouldn't freak out with Stu. They just be like, "Oh, he probably left to be more responsible. He probably left early." You know.
yeah, yeah, actually, that's true. That's true.
But Doug, yeah, you're right. Exactly, Doug. The most normal guy is the guy going missing. That's perfect. Absolutely.
And I really love the end of the movie. And what I mean by that is the how they get to the wedding. You know how they're rushing to get there. They get the
Yes.
tuxedo in while they're on the road, and they get there and he's all tanned, and so it's kind of like they know. Everyone knows that something fucked up happened.
Yeah, everyone knows. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's great. Him being all red and shit. Oh my god.
And then it's like, and like his father-in-law is like, what happens in Vegas? Like he kind
Yeah,
of
yo,
knows.
I love the dad. I think he's such an underrated character. You know, because there's kind of like the stereotype that the father-in-law always has to hate the son-in-law.
Yeah,
I kind of
exactly.
like how he's kind of the opposite. He's kind of the cool guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It makes him even more
yeah.
likable.
He gives him the car, right?
And that's another thing. So when the car gets wrecked, you feel bad for him so much more because you like the dad a lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
true.
when the car gets destroyed, you feel just as
and
bad
and knowing
as Doug and
and
Alan.
remember when Alan was like, my dad loves this car more than he loves me,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So it's like, yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the second movie. What are your thoughts on the
Okay.
second movie?
Hangover 2. Not a bad movie. This movie gets a lot. I mean, both sequels get a lot of hate. This movie specifically gets a lot of hate because it's pretty much copies the exact same formula as the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
They go to someone's getting married, so they go to some place that they're not as familiar with. In this case, instead of Vegas, it's it's
Thailand.
Thailand,
Yeah, yeah. What did you think of the
and
setting? What did you think of Thailand?
I think ultimately I prefer Vegas a little more.
I
Uh,
prefer
I
Vegas 100% more, but
you know
I
I
wasn't necessarily disappointed with Thailand. It's like, okay,
yeah.
it's a different place.
I do like all the weird shit that happens. I like when they're walking through the city and
Mm-hmm.
they don't know what because it's such an unnatural environment that they're not used to.
Yeah.
So and we feel exactly the same as they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like that aspect. I ultimately just think that Vegas is just a little more iconic,
Yeah, yeah, for
um,
sure.
and
But
memorable.
I do like if you're thinking, okay, we've already done Vegas. What are we gonna do? I
To
think
top Vegas, right?
Thailand,
Yeah,
Bangkok.
Bangkok it was
It's
fair enough.
interesting
Yeah.
because it's like I guess some people would argue it's not a third. Maybe it's a second world country. Because it's a country with less infrastructure. It's crowded and it's dirty and
Messy,
it's
feels gritty.
grungy
Yeah.
and like more insane shit can
It's
happen there.
unknown. There's
Yeah,
so much
like the
unknown throughout the
cops there
city.
don't, you just bribe them or whatever, they don't give a shit, right? And
Yeah,
it's like so this environment is it's more intense than Vegas in a lot
yeah,
of
it's
ways.
kind of like a canvas for being you can do more crazy shit in the sequel,
Hmm.
How we have to top the first movie, we'll just do it in Bangkok.
Yeah,
The police don't give a shit, so we can have even more car chases and even more action and even more crazy shit.
yeah. And so
Um
I don't think the tension was built up quite the same way as the first one because who's missing? Teddy. It's this new character. He
that
doesn't
we
really talk much, right? He's related to the group through another character who we barely know and we just got
Yeah,
introduced to.
so we don't we care I feel like we care a lot more about Doug, you
Exactly.
know. Um
This is an
and you're
outside.
right.
We understand why Stu's freaking out because it's his sister's
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
We get the classic, the dad. One thing I did like is how the dad loves him so much and has so much high hopes for him.
Yeah, and I love Alan's reaction towards him. Like, who's this new guy?
Yeah, yeah, he
Re-
feels threatened, right? It's like,
Yeah, yeah, I do like that aspect, but I agree with you 100%. Where I felt like Teddy, as I guess you can say, he's a MacGuffin. Both Doug and Teddy were a MacGuffin in Hangover 1, and Teddy was a MacGuffin in number 2, right?
mhm,
He's the lost object that they have to go after, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But Doug felt way more
yeah,
meaningful than
it
Teddy did.
almost felt like he was in your friends group more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I
And like
think part of the tension that they built too though was the fact that Stu's bride to be is like super hot and like it kind of looks like she's way out of his league. So it's like if he loses the brother, it's like
yeah,
what's the odds he's gonna find another girl like that, So that kind of added to the tension.
exactly. And another thing that I think the reason why the first movie worked much better in terms of our MacGuffin is Doug. We lose the guy who's getting married, like you mentioned. He's the main event. Teddy's not even the main event. You know,
Yeah,
he's not the
he's
guy getting married. He's
like
just the kid that
him being missing does cancel the wedding, but he's at the same time it's not like
it doesn't feel as much of a threat as losing the guy
the
who is
guy
getting
who is
married.
getting married exactly. And one thing I remember when I first watched it in theaters, I was hoping that Doug would be with them that time,
Yeah, I
right?
know
And
what you mean.
it was only later that I realized, oh, we are the Doug. So if Doug's there, it conflicts with the audience.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, fine. Doug went to sleep early. He didn't partake in the
Yeah.
in the marshmallows. It's
What?
kind of disappointing. I'll be honest. I'm kind of disappointed with how they get all fucked up. Like, oh, it was Alan again. Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel
It's like
like
twice. Come on, man.
don't you feel like they glossed over that a bit? It's like, oh, how did this happen?
Oh yeah, Alan happened to put like his Medicaid. They also felt Roofies is much better of an explanation on how they lost their memory. Oh, he put like didn't he say that he put some of his medication or something?
I
What
honestly
did
I
he put in the
can't remember
marshal?
exactly what it was. Oh, it's
It,
something
it,
just to knock him, because his
yeah,
goal was just to get Teddy out for the night or
yeah, and the
something, right?
bags got switched or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
All I
I
know
felt
is
like Alan would have learned his lesson by that point on how you know what I mean.
I don't know about that.
Uh,
Alan's pretty fucked up.
that's true, but I feel like it's just like Alan again, you know.
Yeah, but that they should have figured. Like, okay, the point at which they find out for sure what happened to them, they like freak out. Like, Alan, you did this. It's like, really, guys, you weren't like seeing this coming that it was Alan.
Yeah.
It
When I
didn't
remember
feel as intense as the first one.
and watching the movie for the first time, I you know what I assumed was gonna happen, as opposed to Al. I thought Alan doing it again is way too obvious and too like easy.
Exactly, exactly.
Maybe some people from the first movie drugged them, you know what I mean, or some shit like that, or something in that event's happened. But then I realized, oh, Alan drugged them again. I was just kind of like, okay, it felt like an easy card.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, but that being said, I can't really figure out a way that they could have got drugged again that would have been satisfying.
That's true.
So maybe that was the best they could come up with, and I can't really give them shit. If unless I can come up with an alternative that would have been good, maybe I'll think of one at some point. But
Mm.
for the moment, yeah, I can't really. I don't want to delve too much into that. But another thing I disliked about the second movie is they reused some of the old jokes from the first one. So when they do that, it's kind of like there's the audience that watches, and it to them it's just pure like they don't think about the movie at all. They're just in it for the cheap laughs. It's
Yeah.
like they were catering to them, which I don't necessarily like. I think that they're supposed to be a movie, one step above that. Like
Yeah.
Stu, when he's like, what the hell is going on?" Like when he said it in the second movie, it was like it didn't feel like when in the first movie.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
know what you mean. It's like we've gone through all of this before. It's not gonna, you know what I mean? And essentially,
it's not gonna land in the
it
same
was
way.
essentially the exact same formula
Hmm.
as the first movie. So redoing it again, it's just not gonna hit as hard.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And
However, they did do some cooler stuff, like some more intense stuff that I think did land. Like
Yeah,
the tattoo was pretty cool because it's like they reintroduced that tension. He's the guy getting married, and he has this thing on his face,
yeah, that's true. That's true. I thought that was pretty hilarious. You got the tattoo.
right?
I
And
do. I do think that is a bit better than the tooth. I'd say.
yeah, well, and the other thing was where they woke up. I
Yeah,
I think if you're already in a shithole, it doesn't matter if that shithole's trashed. Right?
I
What
see.
made Vegas so awesome was they were in the suite, in the like
Yes.
$5,000 a night suite, and it got trashed. Right? But
Yeah,
they were
it made
already
it
in
feel
some
even.
little shithole house in the second one.
Yeah, it's like getting it's kind of like okay, it's like the equivalent to owning a car. If you get one small scratch on a Ferrari, that's completely fucked, you know?
Yeah.
But if you get a scratch on your beater car that you maybe bought
And
for
a
like less
dent
than a
and
thousand dollars and
yeah,
a
yeah.
dent, you don't give a shit, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
The one interesting thing was they were in some apartment they've never been in before.
yeah, that is true. But I definitely prefer them waking up in Vegas much more.
Yes. So
I
what do
felt
you
like
think
crazier.
about them putting in Chow right from the beginning?
That was a bit interesting. I see why, because I think at that point he had already become a fan favorite character.
Yeah, so they want to
You know
milk
what I mean?
that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, ultimately, Chow might be my favorite character. He might be my favorite character, so I'm kind of all for him, to be honest. Why? What did you think?
Oh, I thought it was fine. Um
The way they
I
did
think
it,
that's what really set a new standard for Chow, a new place because in the old movies Chow was the badass gangster, crazy, Chinese gangster guy.
yeah,
And then in this new movie it's like, oh, Chow's Alan's friend. Right?
yeah.
He's now a part of the group in some way. Maybe not like in the core group, but he's now.
He's still kind of, you know what I mean? I think that also kind of happens. You know that one friend who might invite someone new that
Yeah,
everyone's a bit
yeah, yeah.
like, who the fuck is this guy? You know?
Yeah, yeah, so I think it works. I think it works.
Yeah, I agree. I like that transition of Chow kind of becoming you know what I mean, just an average Chinese or like a crazy Chinese gangster to becoming Alan's friend
One thing I wanted to talk about the first movie I forgot to mention was how they found Doug. I thought that was brilliant because
on
they,
the roof.
yeah,
Yeah,
because they at the beginning of the movie they saw the mattress and
yeah,
they
on like
assumed that somebody threw it out the window.
right. Yeah,
Remember?
yeah. I thought that. Yeah, I agree. I do think I prefer it over like in part two. They Teddy turns out to the person who's lost turns out they were in a an elevator in the middle while he was on the elevator ride. The power went out and he got stuck in there.
Yeah, it was a bit more of a leap because it's like, okay, remember they figure out the power goes out. So it's like, okay, but why would he be in the elevator? Well, I think they were saying he was going to get ice, right?
Yeah.
So okay, I guess you could make that but it's like they were so certain of it. Oh, he's in the elevator,
Hmm.
right? Whereas on the roof it's like, oh, well, none of the windows in these Vegas hotels open, so where could they, where could it have possibly been thrown from?
Yeah, I do think it was I feel like in the first movie, it's a bit more like once you realize it, it's so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But in the second movie, it's so the power went out. Oh well. It's too vague to the point where I feel like the twist that he was actually in the elevator, it just doesn't work as well.
Yeah, you're kind of like, okay, I guess,
I guess they mentioned it earlier, but
where
it
the
kind of
hell
just felt
else
like
would he
whatever.
be? Like, okay,
Right?
yeah, okay. So let's move on to the third movie.
The third and final film, okay.
So this one kind of took a completely different turn. It's no longer the same formula. It's more of
I
like
kind
a
of think I know why. It's because I
okay,
do think the second movie got shit on a lot because people said it's basically the exact same movie as the first movie. It's just
yep,
basically the exact same movie. So they kind of just took a complete 180 and it's there's pretty much no hangover for 99% of the movie until the end credits.
mm-hmm.
Um did you like that decision?
I think it had to be made because you can't do the same formula a third time. However, what they did do was I think too generic to be interesting. Like I remember people's reactions when the third movie came out being like, "Oh, it's not the same thing." Like I think a lot of people were expecting that
Get another hangover?
they would do the hangover thing, but in a with a twist in a way that is
That was
clever and
different.
interesting and
Yeah, like maybe they could have done another Hangover, but this time someone doesn't go missing. Maybe another problem occurs, you know?
yeah.
Because that's ultimate. A person goes missing. Because it was kind of like what a coincidence. One person goes like one exact person goes missing in the second movie.
Hmm.
So maybe they could have somehow changed the circumstances a little bit.
Yeah, maybe like brought the wives into it
Yeah, exactly.
or something. I don't know. Um, but the thing about the third movie, um, that I kind of didn't like either was they put a big focus on Alan. It
Yeah.
kind of felt like it was Stu and Phil were in Alan's movie, as opposed to it being a movie about the three of them.
All of them. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Or Alan and even Chow's movie. It was very Chow centric and Alan centric too. Even a lot of the character development is Alan and
Yeah,
not really Chow, I guess, but a lot of it is Alan. It's him
yeah.
finding a girl. It's him, realizing that
I'm very
his
50-50 about it because on one hand, I do feel like it is all like you mentioned. It feels like it's an Alan movie with a few reoccurring faces here and there.
mm-hmm.
At the same time, there is like seeing him change. You know what I mean? It does feel good. You know, I feel like he was definitely the character who I think I
Who could
wanted to
use
see
it?
go through
Yeah,
the most
because
character development.
because I think even the first movie was a little bit more Stu character development, right? Because
Yeah,
he figures out that doesn't want to
you know what I
do.
mean. He
Yeah,
he he basically doesn't. He's not a cuck anymore.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so besides that, I thought the plot line was very generic. It felt more like a heist movie,
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it
a
was
comedy
you're
heist.
definitely right about being very generic.
Hmm.
In that regard. I mean, just the idea of a hangover, the original premise for the hangover where you know what I mean, where they have a hangover and they have to deal with the aftermath is a far more interesting idea compared
It's
to
it's way more relatable. In the third one, nobody can relate to what's going on in the third
yeah,
movie.
exactly, exactly.
I
Um
think a lot of the third movie was gimmicks based off of things that were settled or established in the first two
I
movies.
see. And also another thing that I noticed is they really increase how kind of fucked up Alan is in this one.
Yeah, the whole
In the
giraffe
first
thing.
movie, Alan was a little fucked up. Yes, he drugged them, but like at the same time, it wasn't necessarily his fault. Well, he still drugged them, but he thought it was a different drug,
Hmm.
And he was definitely a little odd in terms of conversation, right?
Yep.
But that was about it. The craziest thing is he accidentally gave them the wrong drugs, but he originally wanted to do it for a good time. In the third movie, he like kills a giraffe, like his dad dies, and he barely gives a shit in the beginning.
Yeah,
You know
he
what I
does. He
mean?
like sings and it's
Yeah, takes photos and
beautiful
shit.
and like,
Like they
and the
really
in.
increase how
But
fucked
yo,
up he
one
is.
one thing though, I did like the intervention scene. I
That
think I
that was
think it was
yeah,
pretty
that
funny.
was fair.
Um, certain parts of it, how they brought in like all these people and shit.
But
Um,
I'm not sure how I feel about how much they overblew how crazy Alan is, because I feel like Alan was much like more of a relatable, not relatable, more related to him. But like I mentioned earlier, we've always had that one guy who was a bit odd.
yeah, but if
He
you
was
think,
much more easily to identify in the first movie as that character. By this point, he's just like, no, you don't know anyone like this.
yeah,
So I feel like in that regard, they may have taken it a little too far here and there
I
in
also
terms of
think
how Ellen knows.
I think it had to do with it's like, okay, we're a movie studio, we want to capitalize on the huge success of The Hangover and The Hangover 2. So what did people like about those things? Oh, they liked Alan. It's a classic mistake that a lot of
Yeah,
movies
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Oh, they liked Alan. Okay, let's do Alan, but bigger and bolder than they've ever
And
seen
yeah,
before. And then they end up kind of ruining it. And I think there's a large subsection of the population that are into that kind of thing, and they think, oh my god, look, Alan went even
yeah.
crazier.
Look, he's doing even crazier shit this time. Oh, that's
Oh,
great.
it's great. Yeah, but I think a significant portion are just like, okay, here we go. They know the
Yeah.
drill. Like,
And then a lot of Chow in this movie as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Definitely the most Chow in all of the movies.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think they did the same thing with his character too. They, even though he was pretty, messed up in the
yeah, he was
first one.
definitely crazy. Like he did even. I guess he was supposed to be like extremely. Yeah, you're right. They did even make him even more crazy. Um, but I do think that making Alan a bit more kind of crazy and fucked up was more of a, like was a bit more noticeable compared to Chow.
Hmm.
I'd say. Like
Yeah,
Chow became
yeah.
more crazy. It's
Well,
like, yeah, this is
it's
about to
also
happen.
because they had to do the character development too, right? So
Exactly.
to make it more impactful, they you know they made the his traits, his bad traits at the beginning,
Yeah.
exaggerated.
And in this movie, he, I guess, turns out to be the main villain in a way. Yeah, he's kind of and somewhat of the main villain in
Yeah,
this movie.
who's the other, the guy who played Fred Flintstone, the big guy? I always
I think
forget
his name
his
is
name.
Marshall or something.
In the movie, his name is Marshall.
Yeah. So I guess
I
he,
can't remember the actor's name, but he was kind of, I think Chow was a bit more of a plot device for
I guess,
Alan.
yeah. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like Marshall all that much.
I thought he was fine. I like that actor.
I think that's just fine. Do the other movies necessarily have a main villain?
Not necessarily, but it's a comedy too. You don't really need a
Yeah, you
villain
know
in a
why I
comedy.
prefer the fact that I kind of find the villain in the other movies is their selves,
Or it's
the
even
actions that they did.
time, if you think about it, right? They have a timeline and
Exactly,
they
you know
have
what I
to
mean?
fight
The
against them, and yeah,
the villain of the first two is time and also the actions that they made themselves,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
which is a bit more relatable, I think. You know, we make a lot of mistakes in life that comes back to bite us in the ass, you know? As
It's true.
opposed to, oh, look, we got like another like criminal guy who shoots people. It just felt a little more
Yeah,
generic.
I
And
see what you mean. I see what you mean. It's very true. Okay,
so
let's move on to the characters. So we'll go over the five main characters. First one is Stu. What are your thoughts on Stu?
I like Stu. Every person I think in the friends group kind of has a Stu, a guy who kind of takes things very seriously. Maybe too much sometimes. Sometimes doesn't know how to have fun. And I do think he does go through good character development, especially in the second movie. Actually, even in the first movie, man, I loved seeing him go from some beta cuck to you know what I mean, a guy who you know what I mean,
Yeah,
who actually
he's
can put his
basically
foot down.
your classic nice guy, right? And
Exactly.
he's, he's got this girl and she's like kind of abusive towards him, but he, like,
He
brushes it
doesn't.
off because he
He's too
thinks he has
scared
to
to
be
say anything because he
nice.
doesn't want to lose her and risk not having a girlfriend.
Yeah. And he's
Uh,
thinking about marrying her and shit, right?
right? Yeah.
And at the beginning, like, trust me, like most guys watching that, because most guys are like Doug, it's just like, they cringe. They're like, dude, I feel bad for you, because
Right. Yeah.
they know he's in a fucked up situation.
Yeah. And I've had people in my friends group that are similar to kind of Stu in a way.
Yeah,
You know,
people know
some
that, but
guys who are act very
he's like
nice and
he's a nice guy, right? It's like he doesn't really deserve it, and but he's going through some shit, and his reactions are the funniest.
mhm.
Because he takes it to the extreme level. Like he
And,
go
and another thing is because he is the nicest guy, he goes to the most insane shit and fucked up stuff,
Yeah,
which I think
yeah.
does make it funnier. It definitely makes it even more funnier.
Mm-hmm. And even, like how much out of his way he has to go, like, oh, we're going to the vineyards, and we're this,
Yeah.
so everything's so controlled for him in his life and in the image he put out of what they're doing, that everything that contradicts the image he created is gonna be more impactful to him than to anyone else.
Very,
So
very
I
true.
think that's a good transition into Phil, who is like the opposite of Stu. Phil's laid back. He's already got his wife. He's got a kid. But we see him. He takes the money from the kids thing.
Yeah, he's the
He's
guy who
got
wants to stay in. Like, I remember mentioning like, "Fuck, I might when I go when we go to Vegas, I might just stay there." You know, he's the guy who's willing to take risks. You know,
yeah. He
um,
doesn't take things as seriously. His wife doesn't have to. We barely see his wife at all. She doesn't have to call to see what he's
yeah,
doing, or he doesn't have to call her. So
and
he's
he also laughs at Alan a lot. You notice that?
Yeah, and
Uh,
he's always the one telling everyone to calm down. Like, calm down. We're gonna figure this
exactly.
out. Just check in your pockets.
And he's basically the leader of the wolf pack.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that. Um, And yeah,
I'd
and I
say
think
he'd go through the least amount of character development. I think that's fair to say, you
he
know?
doesn't produce as many funny scenes like Stu does. Stu produces like the funny
Yes.
scene like you're laughing at him, whereas
Yeah.
Phil produces funny scenes like you're laughing with them. It's like when Phil reacts to something and he laughs,
Yeah, I
you
love
want
it.
to
I love
laugh
when he
with him.
laughs
You're
when he
like,
got the
yo,
tattoo.
Phil, yeah, exactly. So he provides that like that cool guy that you can like laugh with about the fucked up situation that's happening. And
Exactly.
another thing that builds tension is when Phil does feel, get serious and he does feel, that's when you know in the movie, oh shit, this is like a fucked up moment
Exactly,
because
you know?
Phil's freaking out.
Yeah. There's that scene in The Hangover too when he gets shot, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird to see him actually start to panic.
Yeah. I think it adds a layer of tension, right?
Yeah,
Because we were
definitely.
saying
Adds
the
a layer of
second
tension
movie.
and panic, you know what I mean? We're not used to seeing this at all.
Hmm.
So we kind of position ourselves into that friends group even more.
Yeah, yeah.
That-
So the other characters, Doug. I think we've talked a lot about Doug already
Yeah,
and how what he
he
represents.
he's
He's the
you know the
everyman.
average guy. He's
Yeah,
the every guy, you know. Um, I think a lot of people actually have that kind of friends group too.
yeah, absolutely.
The guy
Um,
who's you know what I mean? The guy who knows he can have fun, but he also knows when things go too far as well. Kind of almost a balance between Phil
Stu and Phil. Yeah,
and
he's like the
Stu.
base of their group, if there had to be
Exactly.
one, right? He's and I think that also adds tension to the third movie. Sorry, to the first movie because it's like the base, right? Like if Phil's too casual about something, Doug is the kind of guy who would be like, okay, look, Phil, let's take things down. And I think that actually does happen at the beginning of the first movie in some cases, right? Where
Mm.
Phil's like, yo, fuck this, and Doug's like, no, oh, you know where it happens when Phil is making fun of Stu for wanting to marry the girl, and Doug's like, look, if that's his choice, that's his choice, right? So
Yeah,
we can see
exactly.
Doug acts like a foundation for their group, and so the
Exactly.
tension that's created on
When
top
he's gone.
of when he's gone is there's no base. So now
Exactly. Everyone's starting to fall
group,
apart.
yeah, their group starts interacting chaotically because there's nothing to balance everything out, which
And
adds
everyone's
more
got
interest.
got a connection to him, like you mentioned. Doug is the counterbalance between Stu and Phil, so they both need him. And of course, he's also the brother-in-law of Alan,
He's the
right?
one
So
who can
Alan also
control
feels a
Alan,
connection to him,
right?
right?
Because
So
if Doug says something, Alan's like, okay, I'm listening to you. I'll do what you say.
yeah. And because of this, you know what I mean? Every single character, both Alan, Stu, and Phil, feel the need to find him even more.
Yep, that's true.
And that was something that was missing from The Hangover too, I feel like. Alan didn't like Teddy. Phil didn't really give a shit. It was just Stu.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Doug, you know what? For
And
how
I
much he's
think
not
I
in the
think
movie,
they
he's solid.
compensate for that a little bit by putting them in the middle of Bangkok, literally in a city they've never been to before. They have no idea where it is. So it was a little bit more of like part of it was them trying to get out of this place they've never been to, as opposed to the first one where they, that hotel room was kind of their hub. So
Mm,
and it was there that they were, they if they needed to get the fuck out of there, they could easily do that. In Bangkok, they were literally lost.
yeah.
They didn't know the language. They didn't know anybody. But yeah, so let's move on to Alan. I thought Alan in the first movie was great because, like we said, he's that crazy guy, a little bit
Yeah.
exaggerated version of that crazy guy that we all know. I think he was crazy in just the right ways to make it like funny and
Yeah.
cringe and like you're the dog with the other group and you're with the guys and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Zach Galifianakis did a great job playing him. Like you mentioned, we've all got that one odd guy who somehow managed to be in the friends group, in some sort of unique way. I do think he also is a cause of a lot of great jokes, you know? And I
Yep.
think another thing that's hilarious about him is even though he's really weird and kind of, you know what I mean, fucked up at times, he thinks he's so great and normal. It's even
Yeah,
more hilarious to see,
he's so confident about it, which
right?
which just makes it funnier because it's like misplaced confidence is actually quite a funny thing.
Exactly, exactly. So I think he might be the most iconic character of the whole trilogy.
Yeah, yeah,
the
absolutely.
most
I
memorable.
think he, just like Doug is the sort of the base of the group in terms of making everything um stable. I think Alan is the base in terms of the comedic value,
Exactly. You know?
right? Because he, if whenever they find themselves in a fucked up situation, Alan sort of finds a way to drive that fucked up situation to a new level because of his interaction with it or his response to it.
Hmm.
Right? Like the whole police thing, when they get captured, it's like, okay, we got to do this, messed up thing where we get tased, and then he develops this whole rivalry with this kid. So it's like on top of this ridiculous, crazy situation that they have this kid, and this kid like gets him right in the thing, and he like
Yeah, yeah.
resists it for a bit, and it's like, oh my god. So he has that ability to add to the craziness of the comedy of the scene.
Yeah.
So our last character, Mr. Chow.
Mr. Chow, I fucking love Chow.
Yeah, Chow
Kim hilarious.
is a hilarious. I think he's very eccentric. He's very interesting, and it's like,
So many iconic quotes going, Toodaloo, motherfuckers! Like, there's so many great lines that he comes up with. I love the relationship with Alan as in the sequels.
mhm.
I find it hilarious.
Yeah, even
And
though they're a little bit fucked up, but
they're a little bit fucked up, but you know what Shang or Chow is what's it called? In a weird way, he's actually the person who takes Alan the most seriously at times, you know?
okay, explain that a little bit more.
What's it called? He's the one who actually invites him regularly to see each other.
Oh, I
Um,
see, I see.
right? And I guess they have somewhat of connection because they're both a little crazy and a little fucked up. But I think it's good to see the relationship of them being a little fucked up.
Yeah, and
Um,
actually, I do like the relationship between them because it keeps bringing Chow in, and it's not like you don't see their relationship and think that's unrealistic. You see it and
yeah,
you're like, oh, two fucked up people like liking each other and hanging out with each other. Yeah,
yeah,
that
you know
makes
what I mean.
sense. And
And
it's kind of like funny because they give hints to what their relationship is like. Like I think at one point they kind of implied that there was like a sexual thing between them and stuff, and it's
yeah, dude,
like
yeah,
what the hell?
it's
Like where did this relationship go to?
yeah. But I really enjoy the fact that Chow is the actual one of the only people who actually likes Alan for who he really is, and will invite him to things. Actually, be willing to who purposely wants to hang out with him. You know.
Yeah,
So I definitely like the relationship between the two characters. I think Ken Jeong does a fantastic job from turning that character to a very ordinary, forgettable character to being something very iconic and
yeah,
memorable. And he might be my favorite character in the trilogy.
yeah, and it's cool how he goes over the top. I think you were telling me that the Kim Jong was saying that
That
he.
he came up with. He wanted to when he jumps out of the car. His introduction when he jumps out of the car.
Mhm.
Um, and you know what I mean, is naked and starts beating them with a crowbar. He wasn't originally supposed to be naked. That was his idea. And this is actually a good time to transition onto our favorite scenes.
Yeah, yeah, true. So why don't you
One of
talk
my
about that scene as your
Yeah,
favorite?
so I think one of my favorite scenes is Chow's introduction, where they hear something in the back of the car. So the wolf pack opens it up, and we see a naked Asian guy beating the shit out of everyone with a crowbar, and he's saying weird shit like "You wanna fuck on me?" Right, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and if you look at his role in the first movie, he doesn't have that much of a big role at all. Like if you really look about it, he's in the movie for very little screen time.
hmm
And as soon as you know what I mean, he appears once and appears a little bit later in the movie. That's it.
If
So
anything,
you
you
think,
could even say he's the villain of the movie because he's the one that has Doug, or we
yeah.
so think that he has Doug, right?
And for how much of a small role that is, it really proves how much of a good actor Ken Jeong is. How he was able to turn a very simple and small character and turn it like I feel like he was when they were making those two sequels. If Chow was played by a different actor, I feel like Chow wouldn't even appear again in the movies,
Yeah,
or maybe a
yeah,
slight
absolutely.
role. But because Ken Jeong did such a good job, they decided to introduce him in the other movies and have a much bigger role. You know,
Yeah, and
and
I don't think like a lot of actors of I think Asian actors, they'll push on the Asian thing, and I think they did too. You know, his accent was, you know, pretty funny. A lot of people found it
yeah,
funny,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but it was his eccentricity from being such a small guy, and but he's like he's kind of badass, and he has this background, and he's a gang boss, and
yeah,
he's like confident as shit, and he doesn't give a fuck, right?
yeah,
So it was like these traits that they all put into this small guy. It just
yeah,
worked so well in so, and in a lot of ways it shouldn't have. Like in a movie that wasn't a comedy, I don't think it would have worked. But in this specific setting, it just did so well.
yeah. So Chow's introduction, one of my favorite scenes, just because it's an example of how Ken Jeong can turn something simple. Where like originally he was supposed to be clothed in the car. I
Hmm.
think he was supposed to be missing his shirt, but he'd have like pants or underwear or something. But Ken Jeong said, "No, no, no, I'll be naked. I'll be naked." It's just one of the many examples where he can turn something ordinary and make it even more crazy and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah,
And that's why I love Chow's introduction so much.
very true. So I guess I'll go into one of my favorite scenes, the Vegas intro scene,
Oh, master scene.
where we get
Kanye
what's it,
West
Kanye
playing.
West
Can't tell me
playing
nothing.
Can't Tell Me Nothing, and they're driving into the city. And I've never been to Vegas. I want to go a lot. I've talked to a lot of people who went to Vegas. I've seen a lot of videos of Vegas, and it looks like a really really good time. Um, so
Yeah,
I
and
it,
that
and the
montage
city just looks amazing, like with all the lights and everything. It just looks
at night.
exciting. It's like how do you make a place like Vegas on its own? 50% is what it is already, right? But then how they did the montage, how they're it's like all with their buddies. They're in this nice car with the
The
top down.
reaction.
They're seeing everything. They're excited. It
We're
just makes
feeling
you
with their with.
excited.
We feel like we're in the convertible car with them, taking in the sights for
Exactly.
the first time.
Going to
It's
Vegas.
a masterpiece scene, and the song is perfect. You know,
Yes.
Kanye West actually ever a Kanye West song plays in all three movies. It's kind of a tradition. In this movie, it was "Can't Tell Me Nothing."
Hmm.
In the second movie, it plays when they go to the airport when they're about to leave to Bangkok.
Yep.
I think the song "Stronger" plays.
Yeah.
It just another great moment, you know. I
Yeah,
think Kanye
it was
West's
just it was a
music
beautiful scene. It was short, but it was beautiful,
memorable.
and it just it made you excited. And what's even more interesting is like it gives you that it's interesting because normally in these movies, like we said before, you experience the night with them. It's like, oh, this is the beginning of the night, but they did that and they had you not experience the night, right? So
Hmm.
I think it was kind of like that build up. That scene was the first build up of the environment. This is where we are. We're in, you know, fucking Vegas. We're in
Yes, man.
fucking Vegas.
Like I mentioned, song choice is perfect.
Yeah.
That
So
song, oh, fantastic. And it even plays in the third movie.
oh yeah.
I think the song's called Dark Fantasy. Basically, the last scene of the movie before the end credit scene,
Hmm.
where Alan gets married. Great scene. I love it when they're all four of them are walking down, a
And it shows
room
the flashbacks.
and shows the flashbacks to the
Yeah, yeah,
previous
yeah.
movies. I thought that was
Sick.
really well done and a great exit to our one of our our favorite characters, our favorite guys,
Hmm.
our Wolfpack.
So why don't you tell us about your second favorite scene?
I'm gonna go with a scene from the second movie when where basically it turns out that Stu got fucked by a prostitute, a transgender
In the
prostitute.
ass.
Yes, he got fucked in the ass by a girl with a dick.
Yeah,
Uh,
that shit was fucking hilarious
I do think this is the craziest thing that's happened in in the
to
trilogy.
any one of them.
To anyone, to anything. It's kind of a tradition in all three movies where Stu has to go through some crazy shit.
Yeah,
Um,
because
in the
he's
first,
that most wound up character, like we
yeah, in
said
the
before.
first movie, like you know what I mean. We've got him getting married to a stripper, and she has got the ring. In the second movie, obviously, like I mentioned, he gets fucked in the ass. And then the third, there's the end credits scene
Hmm.
where it turns out he got breast implants.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Which
That's good.
I thought that was funny, but nothing beats that moment of realizing he had to fuck
And
the
the
prostitute.
way they
Oh my god.
revealed it too was so well because it's like it was layers, like oh
Yeah.
yeah, then I let you know let my load inside of him, and like
And then he's like, "Your
What do
load?
you
No,
mean
no, no,
your
you my
load?
load."
Your my load? Yeah. And I remember watching that in the theaters, and everyone was like, "Oh no, shit!"
Right? And then the reveal happens. She takes off the clothing, and there's a penis.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and I love Alan's reaction. It's like a magic show. Is this a magic circus? Yeah, I fucking love that. And then just seeing Phil's reaction, knowing like, oh my god, Phil's reaction is the same as us, right?
Hmm.
And I do think that is, in my opinion, the craziest thing that's happened in the trilogy, and I love it so much. And I love Stu's reaction where he's like almost on the verge of crying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So good.
Fantastic moment.
So my next favorite scene is the tiger scene.
Yes.
I thought it was so fantastic because it was excellent because when we're first introduced to them after they have their crazy night out in the first movie, we see the hotel room and we're just shocked because we're just thinking, oh my god, like the amount of money, right? Something is burning. There's chickens. There's stuff's broken, and it's just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
insane. And you're already in your head. You're already in the space where you're like, oh my god, shit really got fucked up.
Exactly.
And we have the characters, we have Alan waking up. He has to go take a piss, like we all do when we have
Yeah,
crazy
yeah.
nights where we've been drinking too much. And what did we see in the washroom? A fucking tiger, of all
Fucking tiger.
things. A fucking big ass tiger. And the way that he described it after, like there's a tiger in the washroom and Phil doesn't believe him, right?
Yeah,
And
it's like,
he's
oh,
like,
there's not, no, there isn't, no,
there's
there
no
isn't.
fucking
It's,
tiger.
I'll go
Like
check it out. I'll
it's
go check it
too
out.
crazy, right? And it's like so
Yeah,
it's a nice build up. It's a nice build up of the tension of
yeah, and
they
it's really just like, well, it's like, how can we prove to the audience that the night they had was so fucked up? It's like, okay, we'll show the suite, their Vegas hotel room getting fucked up. How can we top that? We'll put a tiger in the bathroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then even
Perfect
even
idea.
later in the movie, there's a part where he goes, "Oh shit, I forgot about the tiger!" Like,
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
like
like
so
everything
unbelievable.
throughout the movie was still fucked up, and then oh yeah, there's on top of everything, there's a fucking tiger we have to deal with, and it leads us,
So
to
great.
Mike Tyson and everything. So yeah, that was great.
Great, great moment.
Okay, so your
I think
final favorite scene?
my final favorite scene is the blackjack scene in from number one. Uh, the scene
Yes.
where basically they don't have enough money to pay Chow to get Doug back, so they decide that Alan has to go and gamble for them. Count cards. And I think this scene is just fantastic because it's kind of great to see Alan actually doing something extremely smart because I've had this experience where I know this kind of weird kind of guy, but then he knows some crazy information that's actually surprisingly talented, and
Yeah,
I love
I've
that
been
where he
through
like
that too. I've been through that too, where you
right,
underestimate a certain guy because you don't
and
expect,
then
and then they been through that.
exactly, and I
and
love the
and
build
and
because
that's it's the meme came from that, right? With the all
yeah,
the
with the numbers and shit,
numbers,
yeah, he's
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it, yeah, fucking love that, right?
And
And I
it's
love
like
the
it's a solution to their problem that's fun and interesting, and they set it up beforehand. Remember, he's
you're
reading the
right, the
book and
payoff
he's like,
works.
yeah,
And I love that in the beginning when he has the book in the car. Basically, in the beginning, before he actually does count cards, he's like, "I got this book. I'm gonna count cards when we go to Vegas." And everyone's like,
yeah,
"No, no, no, you're not gonna count cards.
yeah.
No,
And
no,
he's
no, no,
like,
no."
it's not cheating; it's just frowned
Yes.
upon.
Ever like, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And then we actually see it happen was just great, and I
Yeah,
love
because
that. It
at
might
that
be my
beginning,
favorite
he
scene.
added to the like, oh great, now he thinks he can count cards. Another
Yeah,
ridiculous thing about him, right?
right. And it's great to see him actually help solve the problem,
Yep, yep.
right, in his own weird way. You know. So I think I think that could be my favorite scene. I love the music. Probably my favorite shot in the whole series. You know what I mean, with them going down the elevator.
Mm-hmm. And it has that
Love
song.
that scene.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, so my favorite scene, and it's funny how none of our favorite scenes are from the third movie,
Yeah,
and
no,
most of them are
I
from the
like third.
first.
I don't hate it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, nothing iconic. It was a lot of repeat stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
a repeating of the classic stuff. But my last favorite scene is the wedding scene.
Yes.
Specifically, I mentioned this before, how they get to the wedding, and he's all tanned and everything, and he's kind of like still fucked up because he's been on that roof without water for so long, and he's just like, oh shit, I'm getting married now, and it was something like it was supposed to be perfect, but then it ends up okay, right? And they're all looking at each other like we know what we just went through, but we have to act like civilized, regular people that didn't just go through some crazy shit. And I absolutely love the wedding singer. I thought that guy was
The magic stick.
hilarious. Yeah, how he was like, "Take you to the candy shop," and he's like getting up in there on the thing. It was like, yo, Alan had to have been the person to hire this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Like I can't imagine the dad or something. Remember the dad's looking at him like, "What the fuck's this guy doing?" He's going up to like
Wow.
women, he's to old ladies, and he's like fucking trying to grind up on her and shit. The way he was
Oh yeah.
singing, oh, so
Amazing,
good,
amazing.
so good.
Let's I guess we'll move on to our final topic, which
Yeah,
is
our
the future of the
final
trilogy.
thoughts. I think it should end. I said
Yeah,
at the beginning I thought it would have ended fine if it was just one movie. Would have ended fine if it was just two. I
yeah,
I I can't see a situation of them doing a fourth and it being as good or as impactful as the first or even the second. And I think
yeah,
it'll get worse.
definitely.
What about you?
I'm fine with three movies. I think there are definitely movies that I always want to see sequels of. An example of this is Rush Hour. I'm all for Rush Hour 4. Indiana Jones 5 is like the most anticipated movie of my life.
Hmm.
But you know what? I think The Hangover, I'm fine with that trilogy. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned, I don't even think there was that much of a need for two or three movies. And not just we think this, a lot of fans think this, and even the cast members agree with this. Zach Galifianakis, the guy who plays Alan, mentioned that he kind of wished that they had only done one.
Hmm.
And I know that even the guy who plays Stu doesn't even have an inch. He basically said the chances of them doing number four is between 0 and 0. So I do think the cast and crew kind of regrets doing sequels.
I think they'll probably do something like knowing how Hollywood operates. They're probably going to do something like maybe 10 years from now or something. They're going to do a movie about their kids going to Vegas or something.
Or maybe like a woman version. That'll
Oh,
probably,
they'll definitely. I think Bridesmaid was kind of that because it came out
I
around
guess, yeah.
the same time or something. And Bridesmaids was actually a funny movie, very surprisingly. Um, but yeah, uh,
You know what I mean? One of the few series I'm happy with the trilogy. You know what? I love the first movie. Definitely one of my top, not only one of my top comedy movies of all time, one of my top movies for that matter.
yep.
Um, the second movie, I enjoy watching it. There are a lot of great moments. Number three, again, I even enjoy number three. It's that there are definitely a lot of it's definitely, my opinion, might be the weakest entry, but I still think there are a lot of funny and memorable moments.
There's gonna be a
Um,
lot of times in the future where I just want to hang out with some people, watch a funny movie, and Hangover's gonna come up, and we're gonna watch it. That's all I know.
exactly.
And I doubt that there's gonna be any new movies made that's gonna have the same impact. So for that reason, I'm gonna call it one of the best comedy trilogies of all time, and I think we leave it at that. Leave it as a trilogy. Don't continue that shit. Just leave it where it is.
Yeah, that was the Hangover trilogy.
Yeah. All right. So that concludes our podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.